Following our success in spit roasting a rabbit, as you can see in one of our other videos, we wanted to show you another method of cooking food that we discovered, which we have just called the hole in the ground oven. Basically, it consists of about a 50 centimetre deep into a bank hole. Just being in a bank makes it easier to dig, basically, and also easy to get things in and out rather than just a vertical. You'd have to dig in and along to replicate this. So about 50 centimetres in, about 40 centimetres wide, and about 50 centimetres deep. Now the real key to this is the back piece there goes in deeper. We'll show this in greater depth in a little while when the fire's lit, but the theory of it is that the fire burns up the soil here but doesn't come in direct contact with the food you're cooking. So in other words, it's using the heat from the fire, not the actual direct flame in any way. So nearly the opposite to spit roasting. These struts here are to support the food itself, which are split hazel, which I'll show you in a minute how to make. And then the roof is very, very basic. It's just pieces of wood resting on top, all joined together, and then cover them in leaves and soil, pieces of turf, anything you can get your hands on that won't drop rubbish through on top of your food, to hold the heat in. The other key part of this is the front door, which when you've got your roof on, this we made in the same way as we made the chairs and the table, as you can see in our other video. And this has got two sides holding these uprights together, and that slots in the front there with our roof here, and then we slot a piece of turf in the front there to hold the heat in, hopefully to about this level, but with the gaps in the bottom to allow air in to keep the fire going. So now let's go and have a look, and I'll just show you how we made the supports for the rabbit. To make the supports to support our piece of meat or whatever you want to cook in our hole in the ground oven, very straightforward. It's a bit of a guesstimate measuring again, but I just got a smaller twig, slid it in, and which gave me my measuring stick to make this. Hi Snoops. And then it is just tapping in and then splitting down. So you end up with two, and the idea of this is that you've got flat edges to support whatever you're putting on it, rather than rounded edges. So we just think that they'll make a better support for a piece of meat. And also I've just put a bit of a point on either end so that you can stick it into the ground again to try and make it more stable. So as you can see, the fire's lit, and the crucial part of this at the moment is that, as you can see, the flames are coming up from the fire, licking up the side of the hole in the ground oven, but not actually contacting where our food is going to be sitting. So the theory being now that with the roof on top and covered in turf, or as I said before, leaves and dirt or whatever, and then the front door on, is we start to trap the heat from the fire at about this height. Now the other thing is that, as you can see at the moment, the flames are actually going to be burning through the support timbers of the roof, so to speak. So when you've got the front door on, you can reduce the airflow into the fire, therefore just calming it down a little bit. So you have a little bit of control, not over the heat but over the ferocity of the fire basically. And also I've piled a whole load of wood onto the fire to get it going, so that as we get to the process of cooking, is that we've got a lot of heat coming out of the fire, but hopefully some lower flames as well. So the next stage is to prepare our rabbit. So preparing our rabbit for our hole in the ground oven. For any of you that's watched our spit roasting of the rabbit, we came up with this really neat little idea, which we weren't sure if it was going to work, but it really did work well, so I'm hoping it's going to come off again. And that is to, with a homemade needle out of a split piece of oak, we're going to stuff our rabbit with a mixture of a tomato and some coarsely chopped onion and some garlic. And most importantly, when we spit roasted it, using this method, it sort of gave moisture out throughout the cooking process, so it made the meat nice and tender and moist rather than just being dried out by the heat of the fire. And also, of course, it gave it some flavour. The tomato is a complete wild card. I just thought we'd give it a go and see what effect it had, but it's really the same idea, which is to slowly give out moisture and a bit of different flavour. So I'm just going to stuff sort of a bit of onion and a bit of garlic. I've put the tomato right up in the rib cage so it hopefully can't fall out, and then just putting, I think I've chopped far too much onion, just enough like so, so that we can now sew up our bunny with our very crude needle. So it's just a matter of literally pushing it through the skin. I'm doing it quite carefully so as not to tear it, because it's obviously a very wide needle. Pull it through and just tie that off. And then carry on sewing. So I'll just finish sewing this up and then we'll get back to our oven. So we have prepared the rabbit, and what we did first of all was put the roof on, because in doing that we obviously are going to drop bits of dirt and stuff down, and then I just had to make a quick handmade brush to sweep off the bits of dirt from our hazel sticks. And then we've put the rabbit in place, and as an experiment I've also popped a couple of potatoes and a couple of homegrown carrots in there as well. Which is another point I forgot to say, that was a homegrown tomato, the first one I've managed to grow in 3 years. Every year they die from something, but this year, success. So now to seal up the oven and hopefully trap in all that valuable heat. So here's the front door. We've now balanced some bits of turf onto the front door. So that support strut there is critical to hold the whole thing together and to support that turf. You can feel the heat whopping out of that. So just pop that into place there, and then it's a matter of covering up the holes really. Remember to sort of put your turf grass down to save dirt getting inside. Handy bit of moss to plug up a hole. And I'll also just continue plugging up sort of holes. I can feel heat really belching out of there. It's not enough. Yeah. So the theory being that the heat is trapped up to this point by all the turf, and the gaps down below allowing air in to keep the fire going. And it is 6:15, So we will see. What we'll do is leave it for about 10 minutes and we'll temperature test it and see what temperature we've got going on in our oven. Just to give you a quick update, the fire was burning for about 20 minutes. It reached 192 degrees, which we thought was amazing, but then started to drop down. It got to about 160 and we decided to put some more wood on the fire. It literally took about 3 or 4 minutes to take the front out, put some firewood on, put the front back in and seal it back up again. And since then, in about 10 minutes, it reached it reached 300 degrees C, basically. So it does show you what a phenomenal heat trap this method of cooking is. So you could really put quite a large lump of meat in there and cook it as if you were cooking it in an oven at home. So on that basis, we're going to leave it for about 5 more minutes and take the rabbit out and see how well it's done. So 5 minutes later, we're going to show you how to get your food out of the oven, basically. A little bit different to being at home. Just pull back the turf. And just lift out the door very carefully. Like so. Oh, looking good. So now the balancing act of getting it out. Right, now we have our plate. And one that looks to be pretty perfectly cooked rabbit. So we'll get it over to our table and have a tasting. Let's see how the oven did. Oh, look at this. That is amazing. So a bit of beautifully cooked rabbit. The pink staining looks like it's a bit on the rare side, but actually that's the tomato that's been seeping out. As you can see, it is very succulent as well. The skin is a little bit on the tough side, so probably best to leave that to Snoops. But really, really perfectly cooked, lovely and delicate, lovely and moist, with a slight hint of onion and garlic, and I can taste even a little bit of tomato in there. So 35 minutes cooking time and 5 minutes more to put some more wood on the fire, so less than half of spit roasting, so a lot quicker, and also a fraction of the amount of firewood. And on top of that, if it rains for 20 minutes, half an hour, your fire is protected and your oven is still cooking. So there's a lot of advantages to it, and you can use it over and over again. So I think the hole in the ground oven is certainly the way forward, and has been a lot of fun sort of inventing. Well, we invented it, but whether anybody else has done it before us, I don't know. But overall, I think a resounding success.